Garcia here on Para Su Información for your information. My brother from my mother, Bernardo Garcia, could not join us today, but he sends his regards. But that gives us the opportunity to have this incredible crowd that we have today. And before we get into this incredible segment, I do want to remind you that next week we're going to have another incredible guest by the name of Carlos Salazar, who has written this book called Yo Soy Americano, America, talking about the contributions that Latinos are making to our great country. Don't want to miss it. He's an incredible, motivating speaker. He is someone that is working with kids in particular. He's a teacher at Sam Houston High School. And so we want to make sure to tune in for that segment. And then there's a lot going on in our country and locally here as well. Let me just first say that we have lost three incredible ladies that were a part of my world in some form or fashion. They've gone on to our pearly gates in heaven, no doubt, because I know that they're looking down upon us. But first, let me just say to the Dhaliwal family, to your beautiful bride and to your beautiful mother, that we're glad that she's resting now, that she is no longer fighting cancer, and that our thoughts and prayers and condolences continue to be with the entire Dhaliwal family. And then Diane Mosier. She was part of my kitchen cabinet in my very first city council campaign. Her and her beautiful husband, Bruce, were part of what made that election successful. We lost her recently, and we're all just heartbroken because she was such a dynamic force within the community and obviously within Democratic politics. And so we're all keeping her and her family in our thoughts and prayers. But we're so happy that her and Bruce are now reunited. And then there has been another beautiful person that was lost today, mother-in-law to a dear friend, Alfred Postel. I was joining the family earlier today, and just heard some incredible stories about her from her grandchildren and her daughters. So I know that the family is celebrating her homecoming as well. And so we keep all of these dear friends and families in our thoughts and prayers. These times are always tough, but when we pray about it and when we unite, we help everybody get through it. And so I just want to send that out. But as I mentioned, today is the 3rd of July. Doesn't quite sound like the 4th of July because it's the day before. But the 4th of July is known to be America's birthday because a lot of incredible things happened on the 4th of July, 1776. But, as part of what happened is the fact that we had men and women. Even back in those days, women played an interesting part. Obviously, it was mostly our men that did the fighting back then, that gave this country birth, gave this country its identity, and gave us our freedoms. And it's always been our men and women in our military. And as we hear, even those women who were not an official part of the military contributed to the success of our men who were. And so I am so proud. I have an incredible crowd here. I tell you what, I feel like a kid who's in the midst of giants because I am. And so first to my immediate right is Justo Garcia. He is currently the commander of the Lucian Adams chapter of the American GI Forum, and we'll be talking about that. But he's also a veteran of the United States Navy during the Cold War era. He was a part of the 47th and 49th Fighter Interceptor Group, and so we're so grateful to have you today, Justo.
Thank you.
And then next to him is David de la Cruz, U.S. Army Air Corps, because he reminds us that at the time that he served in World War II, there was no Air Force. And so his discharge papers, his DD 214, says U.S. Army Air Corps. And but he also, and look, he was so good, so important, so valuable, so brave, so courageous, that they called him up again to serve in the Korea War. He was part of the 47th Troop Carrier. And then next to him is an incredible human being who is doing so much for our community today. Mr. John Aleman, a U.S. Air Force, Vietnam, they call them a youngster amongst these guys. They call them a youngster. U.S. Air Force during the Vietnam War. He was a carrier officer, which meant that he was involved in the intelligence work of our U.S. military. He will share with us how he was responsible for carrying top secrets from within the war and to various key decision makers. And so, but he's also the co-founder of the Latino Learning Center, an incredible organization that has been touching lives, changing lives, and without a doubt, saving lives and strengthening the community. In fact, I remember Justo and I, when Justo was leading the organization of Spanish-speaking officers for the Houston Police Department, that we would have many community meetings as we were struggling through various issues, and the Latino Learning Center was always a place that we could find an open door to hold our community meetings. And then next to John is the rose in his life, Jeannie Aleman. And Jeannie, although she's the one that I was talking about, that although not a member of the U.S. military, she was a part of the Catholic Women of Clark Air Force Base in the Philippines. And she will tell about her story, but essentially, because John was an officer in the Air Force, she got to join him, and so to help in the cause, if you will, she was serving our injured soldiers, our injured military there at the Air Force Base as they were coming back from being injured. And so we're very grateful to have her today. And then we have Vincent Moreno, World War II veteran, another part of America's Greatest Generation, another member of America's Greatest Generation. He is with the United States Army, 124th Cavalry Special Mars, and he will share what all that means. And then next to him is a beautiful lady that, look, he's a World War II veteran. He's done some incredible things, put his life in harm's way, but he still has a boss. And his boss is named Margarita Moreno, and she is joining us as well. So, guys, I am, ladies and gentlemen, I am so honored to have you. And as we were talking earlier, we're on the eve of the 4th of July. 4th of July is considered to be America's birthday. You served in various times for our nation in different capacities. Let me start with our America's Greatest Generation first. Vincent and David, tell everybody, what was it like when you signed up? What was the mood like in the country? What made you stand up and say, I am signing up? And first of all, were y'all even of age to sign up? Or were you a part of a few of those guys that I heard who were like 16 and forged their signatures or details? So talk to us.
I was 17, and the rest of my friends, they were going. We were school dropouts. They didn't care where you went to school or not. They wanted you to be dumb. And so the other guy said, we're going to sign up, volunteer. So I said, well, if you guys going, I'm going too. So there was 6 of us all together. We all went to San Antonio. The recruiter took us in his car. We were 10 days before they took us into the base, because that's how many people was coming in for training.
Wow.
So they told us, don't take no underwear, don't take a toothbrush, don't take clothes, don't take nothing. As soon as you get there, they're going to furnish everything.
You become a G.I. Joe.
Yeah, so at night, we had to strip ourselves and go to the shower and wash our clothes so we could wear again next day. So after 10 days, they went ahead and they issued us a uniform. We signed up. And we didn't know what we were getting into. We were 17.
And David, real quickly, look at that camera right there. And can y'all see his uniform? Doesn't he still look handsome in that uniform? Look at that. I think you're going to have to fight the ladies off, David. Ladies always like a man in uniform. So So it was just an incredible process. You went in, they suited you up, they gave you your equipment, and then what was the rest of the immediate experience like?
Now, I'm a little bit hard on the hand because I had a rifle exploded the firing range,
Oh.
and it took 80% of my hearing.
Wow.
So sometimes I gotta look at you before I can understand what you're trying to tell me. Somebody talks to me from the back, forget it. I ain't gonna hear nothing.
Wow. God love it.
So they went ahead and had us in there for basic training. Well, they couldn't even find a place for us to take a training. Then they shipped us to Wichita Falls. We spent about a month out there, no room. Then they shipped us back to Lackland.
Wow.
Finally, we went through a basic training. After basic training, they said we will have I think it was a 15-day leave, and they sent me to Geiger Field, Washington, to study to be a heavy equipment operator.
Wow. Wow.
And that was in Spokane, Washington.
Man.
After I got to Spokane, Washington, and finished up over there, they sent me home again. Then they told me they were going to process me to go to overseas. They sent me, like I said, I was in the Air Force. They sent me to Fort Bragg Airborne Base over there, and they processed me. And then they sent us they loaded us on a ship and sent us to Africa.
And David, real quickly, when you came home in each one of those times, how did the people see you? How did the community receive you? Were they proud of you?
The community in my hometown, yes. Where I had a little trouble was in Corpus Christi, and there was a little town called Alice, Texas too. There was a lot of racists out there. You could not go to an American barber shop because they tell you, get out.
Wow. Well, and I know that Justo will tell us about the history of Macario Garcia.
Yes.
Because there's an important piece of history that we don't often talk about. But let me transfer over here real quickly to Vincent. Vincent, what are your memories as when you heard the news, America was going to war? What was the conversation? Were you and Margaret already together? What did you tell your family?
No, I wasn't married yet. I married after I got out of the service. Well, it was kind of sad because most of my cousins were leaving, all the Sermanios were going. And, I was the oldest in the family. I was 18 and I had started working for the Southern Pacific. I had worked there a year when Uncle Sam called me, but I was afraid I wasn't going to make it because I've always been thin and I weighed 122 pounds.
Wow.
But working for the Southern Pacific, I was all muscle. We handled a lot of heavy stuff. So I made it. I was afraid I wasn't going to make it, but I got my 1A card instead of the 4F.
I guess the 4F is the one where you're rejected, right?
Yeah, right. You have to stay home with the rest of the guys. I was inducted in March 4, 1943. I had never been out of Houston, no further than Galveston.
Wow.
So my first trip away from home was San Antonio. Then it got a little further, Pennsylvania. From Pennsylvania to Brooklyn, Staten Island, and then all the way to Seattle. When we got to Seattle, I went to a blacksmith school. I had been trained as a longshoreman or a stevedore. Since I had worked for the Southern Pacific, I knew all about shipping and handling material. So when I got to Seattle, Washington, they transferred me to another unit, which was going overseas. After 60 days on board ship, we landed in Bombay, India.
Wow. A long way from home.
Long way.
We got further.
And from there to Calcutta, and Calcutta, we unloaded the ships, but I wasn't happy there, so in August of 44, Roosevelt put out a bulletin for volunteers for a dangerous combat mission, which promised no increase in pay and no promise that you would come back.
Wow.
So I signed up for that because it looked good.
It was exciting. Wow. And-
So that's when I got to Burma. That's where,
And so, folks, real quickly, Vincent, let me just point out, this is what David is talking about. I mean, Vincent, these are some of the photographs that he is sharing. And he was a part of the, as I mentioned, Mars, or the Cavalry Special Mars.
Mars Task Force.
Mars Task Force. Tell everybody what Mars Task Force meant.
Mars Task Force was a special unit specializing in long-range penetration. We walked 279 miles, as you see, was just what we could carry on our back and the mules over the Himalaya Mountains. We surprised the Japanese. They were expecting us to come down the Burma Road, but we came down off the mountain. And we took the high ground, so we had advantage over them.
Wow. Now the little lady on your right there, Margarita, what year was it that you guys connected and became a pair?
Well, I knew all his cousins, all his family, but I never met him until he was back from the service.
Was it that lean muscle that he was talking about? That
Slim. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I mean, what the thoughts of you seeing him, a guy from the neighborhood, wearing a uniform?
Well, I didn't see him never in his
Oh, you never saw him in uniform?
I didn't meet him until,
Ah.
he was a civilian.
Oh, okay. So did the military history that he had? Was that,
Nobody
ever
knew.
talked.
Nobody knew?
No
Nobody knew my
cousins.
history.
Wow.
No,
Wow.
No cousins. There's like 5 cousins out of one family, and there was 1 and 2 and 4 out of the others, and other families. So they never said a word, never discussed anything.
Mira
They
nomás.
might have talked alone because they used to go to the 2 for quarter beers. At the ice house.
Okay, Vincent, they're calling you out, man. Hey, they're right. She warned us. She goes, "I'm gonna tell you the truth." Well, Margarita, you.
One more thing I
Yes.
want to say. I've been with her for 70 years.
Oh, wow! Amen. Amen. Beautiful,
Qué aguante de
beautiful.
mujer, man.
Right? Margarita says, and I put up with him. Well,
And I'm 94 years old.
All
94,
right.
amen.
Hey.
And look, and I see Vincent and Margarita all the time. They're very active, as with David, in the Gathering of Eagles with Elias Sanchez, and always out there working on behalf of the community, always volunteering. And so, man, I am just so honored to have 2, not just 1, but 2 of America's greatest generation amongst us today. So now let's go over to the youngster, John Aleman. They call you a youngster, John. I'm sure that feels good, right?
Wish they would do it more often.
So John, you were part of the Air Force. You served in the Philippines. You're a pilot, mira, and not just a member of the Air Force, but a pilot.
Captain.
Captain, mira.
No.
So
I wasn't that a pilot, but I did ride the aircraft all the time.
wow.
I
And-
was stationed in the Philippines, and that was 20 hours from San Francisco.
20 hours.
And we had about 5 trips a month from the
5.
Philippines, Clark Air Base, to the continental United States, San Francisco and Washington, D.C., and all points in between.
Wow.
So we had a pretty good trip. And in those days, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have computers. We didn't have fax machines. And if you want to make a call from the Philippines to the United States, you have to wait for that one phone booth we had on base, and it took about 2 hours to get to it. And then you had 3 minutes, and you had to say your piece and then get off.
Wow. Wow. And so, and before we go on with Jenny, I want to ask her a couple of questions. But folks, you're listening to history. This is America's greatest generation. These are great Americans. They have served our nation honorably. They have all received an honorable discharge, which is valuable once you serve the military. Quiet heroes, as we're hearing with Vincent. No one knew of what he had done. Please retweet and share this video, and let's honor these Americans for being the pioneers and the leaders and the role models that they were and continue to be today. And so I'm so proud. I'm so proud. But you got to share. This is history. This is living history right here that we are blessed to have. And so, so John, as you had 3 minutes. How many I love yous did you get in those 3 minutes to Jeannie there?
394.
I love it. I love it. So
being frugal.
Yeah, being frugal, right? So Jenny, you said that you were able to join John 2 years after he enlisted, or he was serving out there in the Philippines. What was that time like? I mean, we were hearing all the news of the Vietnam War. It was some of the information we were getting back obviously was not pleasant. I was a young man. I remember parts of the Vietnam War. I was worried about my brothers, my older brothers being drafted. So what were your thoughts as you were waiting for that 3-minute phone call to come in?
I was always worried whether I was going to ever hear from John again. And there was one time, a month went by that I hadn't heard from him. And so all of the family, both sides, were very worried about it because we knew the minute he left into the service at that time, we didn't know he was going to be back.
Wow. And then earlier when we were talking about when you became part of the Catholic women at the Clark Air Force Base, and you started to help our injured soldiers. Tell us about that experience.
First of all, I would like to say that I felt very honored to be among all these veterans that are now.
Amen.
Then they were in active duty. I was among lots of other nationalities and a lot of ages, but the one that we had the most in the Air Force at that area were young, 17, 18, 20, in the 30s young men. And their faces to me were like baby faces. I had a brother about that age, and he just broke my heart to see them out there very lonely. And at that time it was draft. It was not a choice.
That's right.
And so I just felt honored to be there with them, to be there with my husband, because I was lucky enough to be with him. And so I volunteered to join the Catholic Women of Clark. And the first assignment that I got involved was to go and visit the hospital, the Clark Air Base Hospital, which was the one that would house all the Vietnam veterans that were wounded, seriously wounded.
Wow. And
So-
what was the impact of that?
Well, it was very, very serious. In fact, when I went over there, I was on my 20s, so they asked me, "Are you sure you want to go and face this situation?" And I said, "Yes." So I had to sign a paper so I could go and see these wounded veterans. And so I did, and then they sent me to the 3rd floor where they were dying.
Oh,
They had
God.
been wounded, and then when they saw me, they'll holler at me and they'll say, "You're an American," and would raise their hand and ask me to come over there. Come and see me, you're an American, I can see your round eyes. come and write a letter to my girlfriend.
Oh,
or come
wow.
and make a call to my parents. And
Wow.
then some of them would tell me, my parents are on my way because I'm going to be dying in a minute. And there'll be blood all over from their different type of wounds. And it was very, very sad.
I mean,
But
Jim,
I felt that it was something in my life that I would never forget. And to me, when I have been involved with the service organizations, especially right now, I'm still very active with American GI Forum, I feel that I'm a veteran because I went through all this and I love my veterans.
Amen. Amen. Jenny, thank you. That's
Yeah,
right. That's right. I mean,
Those are the real heroines.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
didn't have to do it.
No pay.
Wasn't required. No pay, obviously. And so, Jenny, you were part of the Catholic women. So I assume that you had to lean on your faith quite a bit while you're going through all this.
Oh, yes, I did. And I was active in other areas. Of course, I also enjoyed being there because being very fortunate that my husband was an officer, I got to attend a lot of the social events as well as I got to go to a lot of the general and colonel banquets and receptions and got to meet a lot of people and got to meet a lot of people from the local area that were in the well-to-do area, and they invited us over to meet. And since it was the Philippines, I got to meet a lot of Hispanics, Filipinos married to Spaniards.
No, wow.
And they were all very religious, and I met them through some of John's squadron, others through the Catholic Church. And so I went to trips. And all of this, we went to some of the church, what do they call them, crusades. So I learned a lot.
Wow.
Especially at the age I was in, I felt I learned a lot. And
Well-
we did travel a lot in the rest and recuperation time that my husband had.
Wow,
To
nice.
the different countries in the Southeast Asia.
Nice, nice.
So I'm very proud to have been there and have had that opportunity. And
So-
like I say, that's why I feel very close to the veterans, and I feel that
Without a doubt.
they have all my support, and I know
Amen.
what-
Amen.
to a great extent of what they went through, even though it was not near.
Yeah, exactly. So a quick question for you, Jeannie. Did John look handsome in his officer's uniform?
Well, I thought he was the most handsome.
I love it, right? Of course.
And I still do.
You still do, we don't know.
And I've seen that picture. He's
Yeah, handsome guy. So let's, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the Latino Learning Center because, folks, you got to know about this. And I know that some of you may have been familiar with the Latino Learning Center, but you got to know the real history. An agency that's been serving us for 40 years. And we'll get back to that in 1 second. But now we want to come over to Justo Garcia. That's why I call him my brother from another mother. Justo, you're now leading the American GI Forum that Ginny mentioned, but you also served in the Navy during the Cold War era. So tell us your thoughts. You know, there was no war, technically, so why would you enlist?
Well, my oldest brother's name is Jesus, okay, and Jesus joined the Navy, so I had to join the Navy.
Like Big Brother? Little brother does like Big
Yeah.
Brother does.
Yeah, I joined, after I saw him in his uniform, high school didn't mean anything. I just waited till I turned 17, and I volunteered, and I went to San Diego, and I think I missed my mother all the way there, and I missed her all the way back. But it was quite an event. I was able to go ahead and go to school in Norman, Oklahoma, and they taught us about how to spot the planes on an aircraft carrier. And then I got assigned to the USS Ticonderoga, and I was just learning how to spell Ticonderoga, and they shipped me out to Okinawa. Yeah. I always thought Ticonderoga was a pencil. But anyway, after I got out of the Navy, I missed it. My brother had decided to make a career out of it, so I had to stay home with mom and dad. They were alone.
Hmm.
But after a while, I was able to go ahead and meet some veterans that had been veterans and then had joined the Texas Air National Guard. And in 1965, I joined, and in 1966, they sent me to Lowry Air Force Base to Air Weapons Control Systems, radar, on the F-102 and the F-101. And then I spent, altogether, I spent 21 years with the Texas Air National Guard. I got to work
Wow.
on all the airplanes practically from the Cold War, the F-102, F-101, and then we graduated to the F-4 and finished up with the F-16 here in Houston. The base here is at Ellington, the 147th Fighter Group, and then in San Antonio, it was the 149th Fighter Group. My most, I'm what is called a gee-dunk. Gee-dunk is the snack bar in the Navy, but I'm a gee-dunk Navy guy, okay? I never went to war. I didn't do anything dangerous. The most dangerous thing I ever did was I used to pump gas on the flight deck of an aircraft carrier. And it was quite challenging. Being Mexicano, there was only two Mexicanos, one guy named Garcia from New Mexico and myself.
Wow.
And I found out about him because we had to stand in line alphabetically to get our pay. And that's how I met the guy.
One person to another. Those Garcia, it sounds like a band.
But in the Navy, a lot of racism, very few blacks, very few Hispanics. Nobody talked to you. You were isolated. So I decided, well, I might as well learn something while I'm here and doing nothing. So I started studying, and eventually when I got out of the Navy, I went to college, and I finished up in 1976, and then I finished up another degree in I think it must have been 1987, somewhere around there. But I enjoyed my time in the military. I used to like the second and third week of January because I used to shoot with the rifle team of the Air Guard, and we used to go to San Juan, in Campamento Salinas in Puerto Rico, and we started our season there the second and third week of January. So that was really something to look at, because again, there everybody spoke Spanish, and I was in the majority. So that was good. But I was very fortunate. Everything just fell in place for me. Education is the main thing, and then be an example for the younger people that are coming behind you. But that's pretty much my story. My Lord's been real good to me. I'm 77 years old, and I'm still here, and I'm just delighted to be here.
Wonderful. Well, and then you went on to have a career you continue your public service with the Houston Police Department, and that's how we met. And you were one of our leaders within the Houston Police Department. I remember how you and I think you used to call him Smarty Artie. Art Contreras, our first one of our first Latino assistant chiefs, and but you were part of the leadership at that time. We were in still some difficult times, being Latinos, being numerically a minority as well as being an ethnic minority, and you were part of the leadership to help bring voice to some of the issues that many of the guys and gals were dealing with.
Well, I always considered myself a different kind of cat because most of the guys joined the police department in their early 20s. I was 33 when I joined the police department. We had an opportunity to go ahead and bring the experience I had learned, and also to help the junior officers that were there. And we set up an organization called OSO, the Houston Police Organization of Spanish-Speaking Officers. And later we were able to go ahead and bring a chapter of the Hispanic American Police Command Officers Association to Houston. So we were involved in La Politica, and the reason for that was not because of we wanted something. It was because whenever a Hispanic got promoted, he got put into assignments, buildings and warehouses is what I called
Or
it.
the jail.
Yeah, or the jail and the trustee dorm, and you were assigned to equipment, the ticket issue room, the property room, all of those, no command experience. And, I was already a man. I wasn't a young kid, so I started rubbing him the wrong way. And,
I remember that, folks.
at one time, I was a captain grade, and I was the only captain grade that has ever been assigned to the midnight shift. Okay, and the reason for that was because
Garcia.
I was a Garcia, and I told him the way it was, and we did some pretty things.
We did.
We got
We did.
bilingual bill for the police officers.
Assistant chiefs.
Yeah, we got the assistant chiefs, Art Contreras, and other Hispanics.
Yeah, Winchie.
Yeah, and eventually Trevino,
Yeah,
John Trevino.
John and
yeah,
Martha.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so we were instrumental in getting to do a lot of the pretty stuff that needed to be done, and then we ran out. So the Department of Justice Community Relations Service.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I forgot
Yeah,
about that.
they just heard me one time talking about how Hispanics and blacks were treated in the police department at Texas Southern University. And I didn't know the guy that I eventually came to work for was there, and he told the guy that was a director here in Houston, he says, we need to have him in the department.
Was that Efrain?
Yeah, Efrain
Yeah.
Martinez, yeah.
Efrain Martinez.
Quite a history on that man.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I was fortunate to train under him and went on to serve 16 years with the Community Relations Service. So it's been, like I said, I just chiripada, mano. I just landed in places just by
Well,
luck.
And right now, you've landed in another important role, and that is that you're helping to lead the American GI Forum. Tell us, and you mentioned that John is a co-founder to the local chapter of the American GI Forum. Tell us about the American GI Forum and why young servicemen and women today, Latinos in particular, need to be aware and should be members of the American GI Forum.
Well, one of the things that I've been looking at, and I'm doing some research on it, is not only getting young Mexicanos and of course, an organization that's born out of racism was hypocritical if they practice racism. So we're open to all races. And also was the same way. We didn't
That's right.
we didn't discriminate against anybody because of the issue that that's how we were created. And hypocrisy don't run in our blood. We're inclusive, etc. But anyway, the young infantryman that comes out of the service has very few skills to survive in a civilian environment. So a lot of them get into trouble with the law and wind up serving time. And I just heard the other day that there's more than 2,000 honorably discharged veterans that have been deported because they were not citizens. And I'm here to say that most of them are combat veterans. And I heard once it was said that in a foxhole there are no atheists,
That's right.
but there are also no immigrants. They're all Americans.
That's it.
So,
And,
and that's what we're working on.
And let's real quickly talk about Sergeant Macario Garcia, a immigrant. He was not an American citizen. I guess he would technically have the official title of being undocumented today, but he was an incredible, courageous soldier, American soldier, because he was defending American lives in an American uniform, and was honored to receive the Congressional Medal of Valor. But tell folks what happened after receiving the highest military honor, and then just to come home to Sugar Land, Texas. What happened?
Discrimination reared its ugly head like it always does. One of the things that happened is that through again just by coincidence, I was fortunate enough to volunteer at Macario Garcia at Edison High School, right there, Macario Garcia, and I did not know who Macario Garcia was because nobody ever talks about the heroes that we have.
That's right.
It's just a blur. No, in school we don't study them. Roy Benavides was one of those guys
That's
too.
right.
And what happens is that we're kept down. And the reason we're kept down is because we don't want our young people to see, hey, we have heroes also and we can advance. And one of the things that always was, when we talked to Roy, and unfortunately I never met Macario, but I did spend some time with, when I was the president of OSO, with Roy Benavides. And you talk about a little man, about maybe 5'2", but he was a giant.
Oof.
Yeah.
Oh, you had to read a story. But you remind me of something, Justo, and that was that I remember you working with Staff Sergeant Roy Benavides to further the inclusion of military, honorably discharged military into the Houston Police Department, that their military service should be accepted in lieu of the college requirement. And you were working with Ben Reyes, council member at the time, to create that conversation. And we brought, or I shouldn't say we, but you brought Roy Benavides to come speak as to why our military should be given that special consideration. And I remember the vitriol that Roy received, because at that time, he had not yet been honored the Congressional Medal of Valor, but there was a petition and a outcry that he should. And I remember we had some crazy city council members at the time that shared some not so American remarks, and come to find out some things about one of them that was serving at the time.
See, one of the things that we have to consider, there is always something underneath that as things begin to look better, something creeps up underneath. When our veterans came back from the Gulf War, they had changed at the police department the requirements to be a cadet in the police department, and the law read that in order to participate as a candidate at the Houston Police Department, you have to have 60 hours of college. Well, most of the Hispanics and the blacks that had gone and fought in Iraq and Kuwait, they didn't have that because they were out there in the Gulf War.
Mm-hmm.
When they returned, they were trying to come into the police department, and
They weren't accepted.
they weren't accepted.
It used to be we were too short, and then they wouldn't let us because we didn't have the educational background.
Yeah. But so what I did is I took the law the way it was, and I put in there that in order to participate in the Houston Police Department as a candidate, you have to be honorably discharged from the military. In lieu thereof, 60 hours of college. And that's how we beat them, because we got all the guys from the area, Medal of Honor winners, the Marines. We got a whole bunch of folks, and we went in and assaulted City Hall because the law had already passed, but they still weren't honored it. So we brought to the attention of the mayor, for every day that they're in violation of the law, it's a $1,000 fine.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that's how we got our veterans in.
Nice, nice. John, you're part of the American GI Forum history. Tell us about the founding of it. What?
Well, the way it happened, I got into Houston about 1970, and we made friends, myself and Frank Orozco, another veteran who was with the veterans, the VA. And we talked to ourselves that there were no services for veterans in the community. There was no organization for the Hispanic veterans. And we started to look into it and found out that there had been a chapter of the American GI Forum here in Houston, but it was no longer active. So Frank and I wanted to have something here in Houston, and we contacted the founder of American GI Forum in Corpus Christi, Dr. Garcia. And so he said he would be more than happy to have a chapter renewed here in Houston. So Frank and I went to work and started to recruit people, and the first chapter was again reborn in Houston with about 20 members.
20 members.
And that
Wow.
was about 1977, and ever since then we have been active here in Houston, and we have gone to a lot of conventions in the state and in the country, and we have learned a lot of things about veterans and how we can help the veterans. we currently have an organization here in Houston that is sponsored by the American Jail Forum, and they put veterans to work. They get veterans that are unemployed, and they will find jobs for them. Excuse me. If they don't have a place to live, they will find a place to live.
Wow.
If they need training, they will furnish training for them. They even go out to the bridges and find them under the bridges and take them in and find a place for them to live. And as a matter of fact, we have put some of those people to work in our program because they know what it's like to be down and out. And we do this gladly. And the Latino Learning Center is connected with the veterans because it was founded by two veterans, myself and Frank Orozco, and we found it in the East End. At that time, there were no other agencies except the Ripley House. And we have strived hard to emulate Ripley because Ripley has been very successful. And Frank and I were good friends of Felix Fraga from Ripley House, and he offered us a lot of advice. And so, to make a long story short, we now have celebrated the 40th anniversary of Latino Learning Center.
40 years, beautiful, beautiful. And
We have given training to a lot of people, veterans or non-veterans, Hispanics, Anglos, blacks, whoever needs training. And we have trained them in computers, in air conditioning, in reading, in writing, in how to buy a house, in just everything that the community needs. We have furnished them some training because we are funded by the community. We're not funded by the government. Therefore, we don't have any strings to answer to.
mhm.
We only give the training that the community needs
And-
and asks for.
And if people wanted to get more information and find the Latino Learning Center, what's the physical address?
It's on Scott and Polk. It's very easy to get to. It's you take the Gulf Freeway or 45, either way. You get off at Scott and you go north about 5 blocks, right on the corner of Scott and Polk. You'll find the community center, and we have a phone number you can call. You can talk to a person, Rodolfo Gonzalez, at 713-223-1391.
Say that number again one more time, John.
713-223-1391, and speak to the person that answers the phone and tell them what you need, and they will be glad to try to help you or refer you to somebody that can help you.
Beautiful. And before John goes on any further, folks, let me just say, 40 years of service to the community. The Latino Learning Center just had an incredible luncheon to honor and celebrate the history of the Latino Learning Center. But when you are in the business of helping people, you can never have enough help. And so I am asking on behalf of the Latino Learning Center that if you've got $100, $500, $1,000 more, share it with the Latino Learning Center because they are helping people who want to be productive and contributing members of our community, and they welcome everyone. And I have seen the work that they provide there. So let's not let the opportunity go by. 40 years isn't long enough for them to be doing what they need to do and the need that exists in our community. So I am humbly asking you that if you own a company, maybe you're an air conditioning repair business, and you need more and better air conditioning repairmen, then go to the Latino Learning Center, support them so that they can give you a better employee. So I would ask anyone out there that knows of anyone that has some treasure to share, this is by far one of the best organizations that you can invest into. Many of the other competing organizations that have a lot of resources. They have a network that allows them to be well tied to foundations and other entities that can write big corporate checks for them. The Latino Learning Center has grown phenomenally over the years, but they still need the people's support because they're there for the people. And as I mentioned the day at the luncheon, Mr. Alaman, Mr. Orozco, and others were incredibly courageous to do what they did at the time that they did it. It was still, as Justo laid out, part of the unwelcoming time of our community. We feel like we're sometimes back into that unwelcoming era. And so we need people to support this organization. They've been doing so much for so many. Let's not forget them, and let's do what we can to support them so they can celebrate another 40 years of giving to the community. So John, thank you, and Jenny, thank you for supporting this young man in his service. And so we only have a few more minutes left. I want to kind of go back to each one of you. Thinking back, and we'll start with you, Vincent, thinking back when you were signing up, and if we have a young man, a young lady that is interested in joining the military, what would you say to them? If you can share a brief thought, and I'll ask everyone else to do the same. What would you say? You're a member. You carry the title of America's greatest generation. You and David do. And so, what would we say to the next generation that we want to be great as a part of our nation's finest? What would be a thought, a pearl of wisdom, if you will, from Vincent Moreno?
Well, I got a grandson in right now who wanted to make me proud,
Mm,
and he's a warrant officer right now.
all right.
If you're going in because you want to go protect your country. This is our country. We should love it, honor it, and even if you have to die for it, go for it.
God bless you. God bless you.
Amen.
Thank you, Vincent. John, your thought?
Well, I think that the young people of today are missing out on a terrific experience because there is no longer a draft. You don't have to serve. But if you want to serve, join the services because there's no other way to really do something for your country than that which has no bad motivations. You do it out of your goodness of your heart, and you do it not only for yourself, but for all the people in the country.
Amen. Amen. Mr. De La Cruz, a pearl of wisdom from another member of America's greatest generation, World War II and Korean War veteran. What would you say to a young person that's thinking about enlisting today?
I would say to finish school. Then if you want to join the service, when you get out, you can go to college, just like I went, even though I was an 8th grade dropout.
Míralo.
The government paid when I came out of World War II under the GI Bill of Rights. I went to electronic school. I made a career of 57 years in the electronic
Wow.
business.
Wow.
I had my own business. Of course, I worked with Foley 17 doing television work, but in my business, I was the very first business that installed the first disc for the
Satellite?
RCA, for the satellites. And
Wow.
I had so much business that it was successful, but I had to retire on a kind of doctor's order. And I sold my business. I got very good money. That's why I can say that if it hadn't been for the VA that paid for my schooling, I don't know, I might be on the street over there begging for money. But in other words, I think that the electronic business was the one that made me successful. And
Wow.
stay in school. Then if
What
you
a-
want to, join the service.
What a good message. What a good message. Your education and your service go hand in hand. So, David, thank you so much. Justo, your thoughts?
A lot of young people today are graduating from high school. They haven't got the slightest idea what's out there for them, what they want to do. The technologists, the robots, and they talk about China and Korea and all of these problems that they're having, but they don't know what it is that they can do. The best thing to do, the best place to grow up is in the military, because it's a finishing school for high school. Most of us didn't finish high school in my era. So it was because of the military that I was able to go ahead and enroll in what was called the Military Junior College. Got a little bit of education, but I got the seed was planted. When I came out, I got 2 degrees, the VA. And it not only did they pay for your tuition and everything else, but they gave you a little money on the side. And what happened is that once you get that education, no one can take it away from you.
That's right.
It's yours. But you got to get it. And the method for the majority of, we came out of poverty. We didn't even, you ought to see some of the pictures I have at the house when we running around barefooted in a gravel street. But no, there was no gimmies. There was no scholarships. I was in the Navy, and somebody said, MIT. What is MIT? Massachusetts Institute of Technology. I said, what is that? Oh, college. College? What is college? That's how ignorant we were. We were never taught to go to school as a career, to be in education, to be a professor, to be a lawyer. In schools, I came out of Tech High School in San Antonio. La Garra was Lanier, and both schools, just horrible. But now they're coming around. The kids are coming out, they're more educated, they're going to college, they have a purpose. Many of them go in the military, many of them. And thank you for the opportunity.
No, wonderful. And to join the American GI Forum, what do folks need to do?
Your heart has to be in the right place. Why? Our veterans are coming out of the military, they've been in combat. There's no career for him as a rifleman, or digging foxholes, or going out and defusing the bombs that have been set up to blow Americans up. You come out, there's nothing for you. Many of them don't even have the opportunity to go ahead and get involved and get into some kind of little job so they can go ahead and get ahead. So they turn to the easy side because it's so tempting. But it'll ruin you. It will ruin you. So the best thing to do is just education, education, education.
Wonderful. And Justo has shared with me the history of the American GI Forum. We will be sharing this with many, but just very quickly, it talks about Private Felix Longoria, who was drafted into the U.S. Army on November the 11th, 1944, at the age of 25. Left Texas, leaving behind his wife and 4-year-old daughter. 7 months later, killed in action while on a voluntary patrol in the Cagayan Valley in Luzon, Philippines. Private Longoria exemplified the typical Hispanic in military service to his country, dedicated to duty, always on the front lines, volunteering for combat duty, just like Vincent did, as he mentioned to us, and determined to uphold our heritage of pride and respect for a country that sometimes rarely appreciates us at home. Sound familiar? Private Longoria remains were not returned stateside until 1949, 5 years later. It was the preparation for his military funeral that caused him to become a national symbol of racial discrimination. This act of racial discrimination propelled the American GI Forum, Forum's civil rights agenda into the minds of elected officials in the eyes of the public throughout the country. In his home of Three Rivers, Texas, the only funeral home, because the whites would not like it. Dr. Hector Garcia was serving as president of the newly formed American GI Forum This is in March of 1948. When he was called by Private Longoria's widow for help, Dr. Garcia was given permission by the Longoria family to intercede for them to assure proper burial that there was proper burial. He sent out 17 telegrams to elected and government officials. The telegram stated, the denial was a direct contradiction of those same principles for which this American soldier made the supreme sacrifice in giving his life for his country, and for the same people who deny him the last funeral rites deserving of any American hero, regardless of his origin. This statement was aired internationally by radio broadcasters Drew Pearson, Westbrook Pogler, and Walter Winchell. Also stated, the state of Texas, which looms so large on the map, looks so small tonight. On January 11th, 1949, Dr. Garcia held a meeting with over 1,000 people in attendance to discuss the possible course of actions in remedying this act of discrimination. During the meeting, a telegram was received from the junior U.S. Senator from Texas, Lyndon Baines Johnson. I deeply regret to learn that the prejudice of some individuals extends even beyond this life. I have no authority over civilian funeral homes, nor does the federal government. However, I have today made arrangements to have Felix Longoria buried with full military honors in Arlington National Cemetery here in Washington, where the honored dead of our nation's war rest. This injustice and prejudice is deplorable. I'm happy to have a part in seeing that this Texas hero is laid to rest with the honor and dignity his service deserves. U.S. Senator Johnson, Lady Bird Johnson, Congressman John Lyle, President Truman's military aide, General Harry Vaughn, joined the Longoria family for a full military burial with honors at Arlington National Cemetery on February the 16th, 1949, to pay tribute to a Hispanic hero. This is the American GI Forum, ladies and gentlemen. And I think, as Justo said, your heart's got to be in the right place because there are still some battles to be fought and battles to be won. I want to thank you all for joining us, especially the wives. Thank you for your respective service in loving your husbands, but also, Jenny, as you did in serving our nation. To our America's greatest generation, we honor you today. We don't want to throw rose petals at you at some other time. We want to tell you today that we're grateful for you, we honor you, we respect you, we love you, we salute you. And to John, thank you for not only serving us in a very, very difficult capacity. You had to move secrets as a part of your work and make sure that they got to the right hands in safe order. And we didn't even get to talk about the fact that if you had been shot down, what would have to happen to you or those secrets to keep them out of the wrong hands. Then you came home, you weren't done. You started, along with Mr. Orozco, the Latino Learning Center that continues thriving today, serving families, serving individuals, making families better and stronger, strengthening our community, strengthening our economy. You are our hero. And Justo, you have led many battles. And as we know, when you fight these battles, you're never popular. You're never the hero. People don't want to hear from you, but you speak anyway. You carry a lion's voice. So Justo, thank you for your service in all of the capacities that you have done and that you continue to do.
Thank you, Bro.
Thank you very much. And so, ladies and gentlemen, it's been my honor to bring to you today this celebration of our nation's history, of our nation's birthday. But we got to remember that this nation didn't get to be great all by itself, and it sure did not begin getting great just this year. It has been great all along because of these great Americans who have been serving, giving, and as Jenny has pointed out, some dying. I always remember the phrase that all gave some, but some gave all. And so to those of you who have a loved one in your families that are serving, that have served, we say thank you. For those of you that have a loved one that is currently serving our nation's military, we pray that they come home safe, and we thank them as well. But to the Blue Star and Gold Star mothers, we say we could not have a military without you, who are willing to send your children into harm's way. Only be proud of them because that's what a mother does. But then you bear the greatest burden, the greatest grief, when your loved one is lost in action. And for that, we will never forget. We'll never forget you, your family. We'll never forget our military. We'll never, ever, ever forget. So it's been my honor. I'm Adrian Garcia. I'm looking to be your county commissioner of Precinct 2 because I want to serve our military as well. I want to make sure that our military have an advocate, someone who's a veteran of a different sort. As Vincent mentioned, that he knows someone who is a warrant officer. Had I not been accepted by the Houston Police Department, the day that I got the call from the Houston Police recruiter, I was actually on my way to go and enlist in the United States Army and had been accepted into the warrant officer flight program. But fate being what fate is, the Houston Police Department got me before I signed those papers. And so not having served in the military has been a personal regret of mine. So that's why I can only be one of the proudest members of our community of these folks who did serve and did some heroic things during their service. And we must always take this opportunity to salute them. But as the Commissioner of Precinct 2, these men and women will have a place in our community, a place of honor. I was proud to be a part, as a Houston City Council member, in the creation of the Veterans Memorial Park, thanks to Richard Perez and other veterans who fought for a respectful place that could be a part of the community, but also part of our veterans. But it was Latino veterans that led that charge to make that happen. And I'm proud that I had a small part in that park. But as your commissioner, I can have an even greater part to ensuring that our men and women are treated with respect, that they have an advocate if the VA is failing them, and that we will make sure to create opportunities for them when they return home, as Justo pointed out. Making sure that every American who has served will find that their value is still great and strong when they return home. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's segment. We'll be back next week with Carlos Salazar, who, as I mentioned, shared his book with me, and it is titled Soy Americano, but he scratches that out because he says Soy America. And we will talk about the great things that he's doing with some of our young people in our community today, and actually in Precinct 2, coincidentally. So until then, we say happy birthday, America. Everyone enjoy a safe and happy 4th of July. Please, if you're inside the city limits, don't pop any firecrackers. It's against the law and it could be dangerous. And please do not celebrate the 4th of July with any firearms. Whatever goes up, it's got to come down, and we don't want anyone getting hurt because of how you should not be celebrating. It's my honor and my pleasure to have hosted these great Americans, Justo Garcia, United States Navy, David de la Cruz, Army, Air Corps.
Air Corps.
Air Corps.
No Air Force. That was
Air Corps. Look at him. He can still serve today. John Alaman, U.S. Air Force. Vincent Moreno, U.S. Army, Special Cavalry. Let's salute these Americans. Let's, in closing, let me just say that one of my favorite military, two of my favorite military movies, but one that I think fits the occasion today. My two favorite movies are We Are Soldiers and Saving Private Ryan. And what was always powerful to me at the end of the movie Saving Private Ryan is this man who was saved, or he was able to be brought home because the officers were given, or soldiers were given, a mission to bring back this last living member of a family, to bring him back home safely. And many soldiers were put into harm's way. This is reminiscent of the Sullivan family, the brothers Sullivan. And at the end of that movie,
U.S. Navy.
U.S. Navy, there you go. At the end of the movie, Private Ryan in his later years looks to his wife and says, "Tell me I'm a good man. Tell me that I've lived my life well. Tell me that I deserve this, because good people died so that he could live today." So I say to all of us, I say to our elected officials, let's live our lives with respect and dignity of those who allow us the rights and liberties that we can enjoy today. Let's make our military proud. They've made us proud. So let's do our part to get back to them. Happy 4th of July. Be safe, everybody. See you next week.